Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, standing in the Senate, surrounded by men he trusted. One by one, they close in with knives. 23 wounds. For over 400 years, everyone has believed his final words were aimed at his closest friend, a single line of betrayal. Et tu, Brute? It's been quoted in plays, movies, arguments about loyalty, except Caesar almost certainly never said it. The line was written by Shakespeare 16 centuries after the murder for a play. The historian who was actually there for the record, Suetonius, wrote that Caesar may have said nothing at all, or possibly a few words in Greek to the man attacking him. One of history's most iconic quotes may have been invented by a playwright who wasn't even born yet, Marie Antoinette, Queen of France, climbing the scaffold steps to the guillotine while a crowd she used to rule watches and jeers. As she walks up, she accidentally steps on her executioner's foot, and instead of anything grand or defiant, the last thing history's most hated queen ever says is an apology. "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Seconds later, she's gone. Not a speech, not defiance, a reflexive sorry to the man about to kill her. John Adams, second President of the United States, father of a president, one of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence itself. He's dying at home on July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years to the day since that declaration was signed. As he lies dying, he's remembered for saying, "Thomas Jefferson survives." A haunting poetic line, since Jefferson had actually died hours earlier that same day, hundreds of miles away, without Adams knowing it. It's one of the most repeated deathbed quotes in American history, but the exact wording, whether he said survives or still survives, and how much he actually knew, has been debated by historians for 2 centuries. The story that stuck, 2 founding fathers dying on the same symbolic day, one invoking the other with his last breath, was almost too perfect to be entirely true. Napoleon Bonaparte. The man who conquered most of Europe was exiled to St. Helena, a remote island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, over 1,000 miles from the nearest continent. He spent his final 6 years there under British Guard, confined to a small, damp house, a massive fall from ruling an empire. Witnesses at his deathbed recorded his final words as France, the army, head of the army, Josephine. 4 fragments, barely sentences, trailing off into nothing. An empire, a war, and the woman he loved, compressed into the last broken phrases of a man who once believed he could take over the world. Louis XIV, the Sun King, ruler of France for 72 years, the longest reign in European history. As he lay dying in 1715, surrounded by his court, his final words were, "I'm going, but the state will always remain." Not a plea, not a prayer, but a statement about the institution he'd spent 7 decades building into something larger than himself. A king who once declared, "I am the state," spent his last breath making sure everyone understood the opposite was now true. He was leaving, and it would go on without him. Pancho Villa, the revolutionary general who once had US troops hunting him across 2 countries, was gunned down in his car by assassins. For decades, the story passed down was that with his last breath, he told the men around him, "Don't let it end like this. Tell them I said something." Witnesses say Villa was killed almost instantly. There was no time for a final speech. Winston Churchill, the man who led Britain through its darkest hour, spent his final days in a haze, drifting in and out. The line that gets repeated is, "I'm bored with it all," a defiant last word from a man who'd lived a massive life. What his own nurse actually recorded him saying was different. "I'm having a hell of a time." Not boredom, exhaustion. History picked the version that sounded more heroic. Malcolm X, standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people when gunmen rush toward him. As the crowd surges and the first shots go off, a man the world had been told to fear spends his last seconds trying to stop violence, not start it, shouting, hold it, don't get excited, let's cool it, brothers." Some accounts say those exact words. Others, working from an audio recording of the moment, say he only had time to repeat one word, "hold it," again and again before the shots cut him off. Either way, a man built up as dangerous spent his final breath trying to calm a room down, not burn it down. P.T. Barnum, the man who built an empire out of spectacle and showmanship, spent 70 years selling people things they didn't know they wanted. Even as he lay dying in 1891, his mind stayed on the business. His last words weren't for his family or about peace. He asked, "How were the receipts today at Madison Square Garden?" Even facing death, the showman wanted to know how the show did. George Washington, the most powerful man in a brand new country, the general who could have crowned himself king and chose not to. Dying at home at Mount Vernon, he spends his final hours doing exactly what you'd expect: checking his own pulse, reviewing his will, making sure his affairs are in order. His last instruction is about his burial, making his aide confirm 3 separate times that he understood. Then, satisfied, he says just 2 words: "'Tis well." Unlike almost everyone else on this list, this one is actually verified, recorded in real time by the aide sitting beside him. The most powerful man in the room, and his last act was making sure everyone else would be fine without him. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.